In a world full of lies, how do we discover the truth?
People do, there is an expectation, I think, because there's just so much content being created all over the place, that there is an element of entertainment to it, just to kind of keep people, I think people have got short attention spans these days, and, kind of to keep them interested or captivated or,
You would have seen all over the big tech Twitter files talking about, journalism being impacted by incentives, corruption, all that sort of thing. What actually happens? What leads to that?
Social media platforms we've got, the fact that journalists have to churn out a huge amount of content in a quick time, kind of for organisations like Stuff. It's not necessarily just a daily paper anymore. It's, it's got to be coming out throughout the day. I think that actually really dictates the type of content that we get. I didn't have a strategy before having kids. Maybe other people are a little bit prepared, but I think you figure it out. I know lots and lots of women who, kind of really successful, either still in the corporate world or, running their own businesses and have kids and an amazing sort of family life as well. So you can do it.
What actually happens? What leads to that? So in this one, we talked to a PR specialist and we asked them challenging questions, and also around how to be a mother as well as running a business, and also, how to work your way up the ranks in career development when you're taking time off to look after your children. So this is a challenging podcast for her to go through, and she navigated it very well. So let me know what you think, guys and girls. So I start every podcast with like the background of the person that's going to take us on the journey. So what would you encapsulate what you do?
Oh gosh, well, I do PR and communication. So essentially my job is to help people tell their story to an audience for a desired response. So to create a sort of positive impact or, kind of behaviour change or kind of action. So a lot of it is helping them craft their story and kind of what their messages are. It's funny, I had a potential new client contact me this week, and she said, I've thought about PR before, but then I spoke to somebody and they said my story was really boring. I was like, but I have actually haven't found one client where there isn't a real gem when you kind of dig into it. So it's kind of digging in and delving in and finding it, what's that magic? What's that kind of really, kind of piece of interest that's going to spark engagement and interest from their target audience and get them to do essentially what they want to do. So that's kind of what I do. I mean, whether that's through media relations or an event or, kind of social media or influencer engagement, they're all just different channels. So, but the crux of what I do is telling stories. And I think for me, when I first started, it was interesting because I'm, sometimes people see PR people as the masters of spin. I'm terrible. I'm a terrible liar. You can tell if I'm lying instantly. So for me, I have to convince myself that what I'm going to be telling on behalf of my client is of interest and merit. And if I don't generally believe that, I can't expect anyone else to believe it. So, to me, I wouldn't say I am a spin person. I'm good at crafting messages and crafting stories, but it's all got to be genuine and it's all got to be, kind of real and honest and heartfelt.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
I think there'll be some interesting things because I've been sort of thinking about what makes a video good, and they talk about the quality of the idea, which is in essence the quality of the story.
Yeah, yeah.
So what do you believe is what makes a story good? Do you ever look at Pixar? Do you ever look at different things? Or
it's funny because I'm a little bit intuitive with things like that, but I think there are sort of, some different categories. It's like, is there a human interest angle? Kind of somebody's backstory that is different, or, kind of they've surmounting a challenge is always good, and that's kind of quite sort of on the cinematic sort of thing. I think I read something a while ago about kind of the structure of movies, and usually
Hero's
there's
journey.
there's like some big challenge that you have to overcome, and then there's kind of like the dip and the lull, and the protagonist isn't doing very well, and then they maybe have a bit of an epiphany or enlist some help, and then they kind of everything goes well again. And so definitely if there is a challenge or an issue that is gonna tap into kind of people's emotions or kind of the zeitgeist, that can really help. So sometimes what I do is actually did a social media post on it on newsjacking. So, kind of having a look and seeing what's topical, seeing what's, kind of in the news, what people are caring about at the moment. Is there something to of a business or an organisation that can provide a different insight or a different angle or, kind of a different take on that's going to kind of help carry the story on? So, yeah, there are, I think, different ways, but it's, it's essentially, why should somebody care? Why should somebody give a shit? That's what you've got to ask.
Oh, you're a swearer. Good.
A little bit.
Yeah, PR that swears. I don't accept that. Good. Yeah, no, keep going. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Well, just on that, I'm starting to get more obsessed with it. My interest is understanding people and why they do what they do. Hence why my podcasts get a little too deep. But then I think about, I was watching Mr. Beast. Do you know Mr. Beast? He's like a famous, he's the most followed man essentially in the world for his content. So he's got 7 billion views or whatever.
Gosh, I should know him then. Yeah.
Well, if you're on YouTube and TikTok, he's doing well.
Yeah.
And someone asked him, how do you make a video so good? And he's like, well, you should study Pixar and how they shape a story. And I didn't want to study Pixar, so I just asked ChatGPT, what is it about Pixar that does well? And they talked about, well, you said the emotional theme.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of Pixar films where I think about, if I consume a video, what emotion is it speaking to? And then I ask my friends, and they're like, oh, well, this one I like because it makes your dreams seem really easy because I overcomplicate things.
Right.
Or I really like this video because it talks about the potential of what I could be because I doubt myself.
Yeah.
So do you ever think of emotionally challenging moments in your clients' lives or in their business or in some sense that resonates with the story of the person that will consume it? Or what's your intuitive process that you go through?
Yeah, I mean, it kind of depends on the nature of the organisation. So I've been recently doing some work with a not-for-profit that is very personal because it's a parent collective and all the people involved have been through a difficult time and they're raising awareness about kind of issues within the family court system.
Oh, yeah,
so that for that sort of thing, yes, it and if it can be quite tricky because if it is a very personal subject matter, really guiding somebody through that who might have been through quite a traumatic experience, that can be, you've just got to be very mindful of their situation, and if you're putting them out there into the world to tell their story, that you're doing that in a safe way. But something like that, then yes, there is, kind of so much amazing, kind of just heartfelt content there that's just true and genuine that you just need to help them share it, but then it could be a slightly different organisation, say like an HR company, so you might not think initially that they're going to have some heartfelt story, but finding a job, and if you're out of work, that's stressful. So I guess it's finding kind of what it is, whether it's from their client's point of view or, what the stories are that are just going to kind of hit home with the audience. And I guess as well, for me, it's thinking, what is their ultimate goal? So, an organisation might have tons of different stories, but are they wanting to speak to new businesses to sign up? So the story that they're telling is going to be different to if they're looking for candidates, so you've really got to tailor it to what their goal and objective is.
Bit of a intense scientist. Sorry to interrupt. If you had another flow you want to carry
no,
on.
No. I think I just reached the end.
You reached, that's what I thought. But then you started. I was like, oh shit.
No.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Bit of a heavy question, but what do you think sells better? Pain, fear, joy, or aspiration?
Ooh.
Or something else.
I think because of the nature of the world at the moment, and we've kind of come out of the other end of COVID, thank God, but it's still sort of in our sort of distant near distant memories. There's a lot of heavy stuff going on, so I feel sometimes that kind of going down that pain route is a bit tricky because people are already overloaded with heavy stuff that's going on, whether that what in their personal life or what they're just hearing on the news. I'm leaning towards things that can be on the positive. So say for this organisation, it's sort of, they've all been through difficult situations, but they are gunning for a vision of changing that. So kind of actually hooking people on what the goal and the vision is. So, you know, kind of where the silver lining is, where you're kind of getting to. I think, you know, and I guess that maybe goes along the whole Pixar sort of movie cinematic thing. I think generally people like movies with happy endings, don't they?
Yeah.
You know,
well, yeah, true.
You know, otherwise, are you really going to go and see a sequel if you're kind of being like doom and gloom and depressed and, you know, kind of like you're there with your head in your hands at the end of it? I mean, some movies are like that, but yeah, I think right now there's just a lot of heavy stuff going on. So you've kind of got to give people a positive somewhere in the story. So yeah, to latch onto. Yeah.
Well, it's the thing I'm having to learn, because so I've had to learn to be superficial for other people, because I don't really give a fuck, like, oh, how's your day? What's the weather? Like, I don't care. I care about, like, deep things.
Right.
But I've learned that a lot of people, like, I want to know the truth. I would rather know the darkness of humanity than actually pretend like everything's fine.
Yeah.
But a lot of people, you know, they medicate their lives with, you know, alcohol every weekend and have a job they don't like and stay with an unhappy marriage, you know, because they can't face the pain. And they want to be distracted.
Right.
And they want to have fun. Yeah. And I'm learning that more about content. Like, mine's a bit too heavy, dark, like knowledge. I made that mistake with training salespeople. I just stack a meeting with knowledge. Right. They'd be overwhelmed, don't do anything.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
So what do you... Like, do you think entertainment is better than information? Or do you think what captivates an audience, you know?
I think you can do both. You know, I think you can entertain and inform. You know, I think they don't have to be mutually exclusive.
True.
And I think you're right. People do. There is an expectation. I think, you know, because there's just so much content being created all over the place, that there is an element of entertainment to it, just to kind of keep people. I think people have got short attention spans these days, and you know, kind of to keep them interested or captivated. Or I think you kind of have to entertain a little bit. But then I think, you know, as well, you know, I work with lots of media and amazing journalists, and, you know, I wouldn't say they entertain, they write things in a really engaging way for their audience, but it doesn't necessarily have to be entertaining on the kind of lighter side. I think you still can get across quite heavy messages, but it's just, there's got to be some engagement level to it. Yeah.
Do you think, so like there's been a lot, bringing journalists into it, they're getting a lot of hate of late, you know, because of misinformation or, you know, because they're censoring in certain components. Do you think the system has created the journalists, or the journalist creates the system, in the sense that, you know, are they being influenced by the consumer that just wants clickbait and they're being rewarded by clicks? Or do you think they're influencing the public, and the public are going through that through inertia? What do you think's leading to this sensational stories?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question. And it's funny because way back when I did my degree, I did my dissertation on communication and the nature of communication depending on the medium. So there was a guy, Marshall McLuhan, who wrote lots of stuff, I think sort of 60s and 70s, you know, and kind of way back when. But his whole thing is the medium is the message, or kind of forms the message. So I think, in a way, the social media platforms we've got, the fact that journalists have to churn out a huge amount of content in a quick time, you know, kind of for organisations like Stuff, you know, it's not necessarily just a daily paper anymore. It's, you know, it's got to be coming out throughout the day. I think that actually really dictates the type of content that we get. I definitely have seen in New Zealand, since I've been here in the last, you know, kind of over a decade and a half, that media are just under so much pressure. They're really under-resourced. You know, lots of the publishing houses have just sort of slashed staff numbers, but then they have to produce more content. So, you know, I think the nature of that does really put a lot of pressure on them for things like fact-checking, doing long-form journalism, doing investigative journalism. It just becomes a lot harder. So I really think it is actually the medium and the format that we have that is driving the type of content that is out there and we're consuming. So,
wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
You danced around a very serious subject too. You did well there. Some people might falter on. That's especially my preconceived notion of PR.
Right.
So you've got well, if you think about, I think, people say in New Zealand, oh, they're so nice, people are so lovely, and I think that's just an abundance of resource. I think humans have a capacity for bad things, and you see that in with COVID and how we treat the unvaccinated. You don't have to speak on that, but it was very easily done. And then I think about the journalists that, they're reliant on their stream of consumers and then selling advertising to the consumer. And if they're under-resourced and they're in need of money, do you think that in some way the people that are left to fund them could sway it? Maybe in America, how 75% of news is funded by pharmaceuticals.
Yeah, well, they're
heavy.
I mean, in a
wave
way,
the white flag.
It's kind of good for PR people because, if you package up a story well, and you provide kind of supplementary information, then, possibly somebody to interview about it, you're much more likely these days to kind of have your story picked up because, you're kind of doing half of their job sort of for them.
Yeah,
so,
that's interesting.
and there is also a lot of paid content. I think that's something that I've seen grow a lot more. Before, back in the day, it used to be kind of, editorial and then advertorials or sort of sponsored content. There's a hell of a lot of sponsored content out there. I think some media are very good at being clear about that, and other, it's a little bit more kind of vague. So, and definitely having ongoing relationships, and kind of if you've done a little bit of paid stuff, then you might be more likely to get sort of some free editorials. So, definitely ad spends and, kind of companies who are spending money with media are in a way going to be able to sway a little bit on the type of content, but I think most media in New Zealand is pretty good at still having some integrity, and kind of they won't publish something that they don't think is true or valid, or it doesn't matter what somebody's paid for it. I don't know, maybe I'm a little bit idealistic there, or I'm wanting to believe that, but I mean, I think it's still, we're not in a total situation where there's, kind of real fake news here, kind of, and there are always as well, different publications might have slightly different political biases, and that's probably more to do with the publisher and the publishing house. So, that nothing is always completely objective, but I think it's fairly balanced here compared to, some countries around the world. So,
maybe we won't sing out some countries, but let's assume there's this country that some level is being influenced in terms of the information. What do you think would lead to it? Like, knowing your understanding of journalism and knowing your understanding of PR, is there a situation that could unfold where the self-interest is over influencing the truth?
Yeah, well, I mean, there was recently with Radio New Zealand, the whole thing on certain articles having a bias towards Russia. And that was flagged. I have to say, I didn't really get down into the crux of it, whether it was a particular journalist who, for whatever motivations, was doing this, or whether the articles were actually being hacked and sort of being changed. But, that to me, that was quite a shock because, RNZ I would put as, kind of in terms of journalistic integrity, kind of one of the top sort of media outlets in New Zealand. They're kind of very independent. So that was a bit of I think, definitely eye-opener for me as a PR person that, for whichever way, I don't know, whichever tactic was actually used, that their articles and content could be significantly influenced. And I think that's a big watch out for, kind of media and comms people and PR people sort of in general. So, that we're not immune, even, kind of little New Zealand, kind of, on this part of the world, that, there might be some more nefarious kind of influences on, kind of what we're reading. So I think always be analytical, always check multiple sources. Don't take, be cynical. Don't take anything as the gospel. Kind of do your homework and do your research. Yeah.
I didn't expect you to go. I thought you'd just cough out, to be honest, which is good. You
Oh,
went
right.
there.
Yeah.
Well, because as I say, I don't really get PR, and I'll probably be. A lot of people might feel this, which will give you an opportunity to speak to it. Because it's like, I get the PR, like owning the perception of what you do, and that leads to a positive outcome for the people you serve.
Mm-hmm.
It makes sense to me. The thing, I sort of see it like HR and PR. Like HR is like, we care about our employees, but actually we're in the best interest of the corporation.
Yeah.
When it's done badly, and that's the bad perception. And PR is like, it's inauthentic. We're going to just control the narrative as opposed to share how the company truly deals with things. What do you think has led to that? Is that an unreasonable PR perception? I'm saying that's not what you do, but is that what you get? Like, what objections do you get from people? Or they're like, oh yeah, fuck yeah.
I don't tend
What
to
is
get
PR?
objects. Yeah, I think there is.
What a lovely
maybe, sort of people don't necessarily get what PR is.
Okay.
Like I find with, when I was working in Adland for sort of big ad agencies and sort of, looking at the PR offering sort of within those, I'd be working with marketing managers, marketing directors, marketing teams, and they had a very good understanding of what the marketing mix was and how PR would kind of play into that. It's been interesting since I've been, sort of set up my own business. Sometimes I work with bigger organisations, sometimes work with, bigger charities that, might have in-house PR but need some support for a specific project. But I also work with lots of smaller businesses and organisations who maybe haven't used PR, and it's kind of, they kind of think, oh, it's something that I think I should have, but I don't really know what it is or how it works. And that's kind of interesting because it's, I have to go back to basics with them and sort of like really step by step sort of talk through the different types of approaches that we might do and what the benefit to their business and organisation will be. But I guess, again, essentially it is getting your messages and stories out there. So, kind of that, it to me is the really simple way of explaining it. So, kind of PR tends to be, kind of media relations, events, kind of might be stakeholder activity or, kind of advocacy activity, but all about communicating a message and I guess convincing people about something, whatever it is that, they're trying to sell or kind of what their cause is. It's convincing people to do something. Is it buy a product? Is it sign a petition? So that's kind of, I guess it is a little bit go back to basics because there is that, I guess sort of, slightly more negative, sort of,
We're so very different,
spin doctor sort of side, but that's not what I do.
Well, it's quite interesting watching us interact is because I try and think of what the listener would be because you appear to be very positive, look at the brighter side of life, and I'm very doubting and pessimistic and challenging. So it's quite watching us interact.
Right, yeah.
I was thinking, I was watching, Attention Seeker. They're like a company that makes content, and Stan Henry was on the show like 2 years ago.
Right.
And they helped this company called One New Zealand, which go from Vodafone to One New Zealand.
Oh, yeah.
And part of what they were doing was reading the hate messages in the comments.
Right, yes.
And then someone else copied them, Jetstar.
Yeah.
And Jetstar didn't have any positive feedback from what I could see in the comments of them doing it, but they had lots of views.
Right, yeah.
What are your thoughts on, like, because it's kind of like a Band-Aid? Like, I would see sometimes, as I say, misconception of PR, so I'm glad we're talking about it, is like, this horrible things happen, let's put a positive spin on it, so instead of addressing the underlying issue. It's like with One New Zealand, they're complaining about how much, or let's do Jetstar, they're complaining about people cancelling flights, people not communicating. They have this actual perception.
Yeah.
Whereas I would think, why not create a video where you're asking what the biggest complaints are and you're addressing everyone and actually tactically improving it?
Yeah. Well, I think if there's a fundamental problem with, kind of in an organisation, and Jetstar is known for being as reliable as it could be. But it doesn't matter how many, and if people consistently can see that, and you can spin anything, you can spin things to the cows come home, but people aren't going to believe it. So it's pointless doing that. It's kind of like if you go into issues management or sort of crisis management, if the shit hits the fan, the first thing you should do is be transparent and fess up and own your mistakes. That is kind of, crisis management 101. So don't bullshit people, because otherwise they're not going to believe you. You've lost them already. So it's kind of pointless. So, in those cases where I think there is a fundamental problem, you can talk about, we've heard you, we listen to you, we acknowledge you, we can do better. We're on the road to making change, and then so at least people feel a little bit validated, like, oh shit, I had this terrible experience. At least they've said, hey, we're sorry, so that to me would probably be a better way of communicating to that sort of situation, rather than going, actually, it's fine, kind of like 25% of our flights, they were on time. It's like, well, the 75% of people who have had a really stressful time because they've missed their flight's been cancelled, they don't give a shit. So, yeah. So, you've got to be genuine, basically.
Interesting.
Yeah. So owning your mistakes and saying you've heard, and you're, even if you're just on the road beginning that process to improve them, you're going to get a lot better positive sentiment from that than just glossing over. So, yeah.
Fuck it, you're crushing all my misconceptions about PR, which is good.
Good.
Because I'm like,
well, the negative ones at least.
Yeah. Well, if you ever have objections with the client, just send them this episode, and I would have voiced all their problems or concerns.
Yeah.
So, okay, let's say you're Jetstar. Like, Jetstar hires you for your PR.
Right.
And you can ask you questions about what they're trying to do or whatever. But what would you PR for them? How would you PR?
Oh gosh, I don't usually fly jets.
Oh, okay. Well, you can pick a client, but you know what I mean? Like, what's the process, or how does it work?
Okay. So,
but like an example, instead of you telling what you're good at, you
have an initial planning phase. So, with my clients, I go through like initial discovery session. So, depending on kind of the extent of what they need, that might be one session, and then I come back with some initial recommendations. But you kind of want to find out what their actual goals are, what their bit about their organisation, kind of, why they're doing what they're doing, what their overarching sort of goal is, and what sort of specific business or organisational goals they might have sort of, in the short term, and what they are hoping that PR and comms will help them achieve. And then you kind of need to do that background information to kind of get to the crux of what it is that I'm actually going to be doing for them. And then it's sort of developing a tailored approach that's going to help them achieve that. So, whether looking at what the strategy is, PR and comms strategy, and over what period of time, and then what sort of tactics and activities you need to kind of execute that. So, yeah, it's a process, basically.
Yeah. Which is going to be hard. So can we wing it? Just, even though it won't be reflective of your talent, you normally structurally sit down, take your time, get to know everything.
Yeah.
If we so let's say Jetstar, their goal is to change the perception of their service, because it's late, and they want to be more where people see it more as a positive experience when they come, and that you understand it's issue management, shall we say?
Yeah.
The time frame is they want to do it over a year.
Right. Yeah.
They're not attached to what platform they use. They just want to address these concerns, and you're allowed to influence them where they'll actually do what you say to fix things. Like, let's say they magically will fix being on time.
All right. Okay. Yeah. That was going to be a bit of a caveat. It's like there's only so much you can do if the problem's still there.
Still a problem.
Yeah. Oh, I don't know. I mean, I think you could kind of do some fun things almost on some of their metrics. So, kind of, I think for something like that, the proof is in the pudding, and people don't want to be, kind of things to be a bit fuzzy. But it's like, okay, this is our goal. We're going to go from X% of cancellations to X, kind of like, and have like a actual barometer or something like that. Yeah. If they're confident of that's what they want to do, you could do something like that. And I think really, they'll have their social media team who I'm sure will be working hard sort of with stuff, but, help them with their messaging as well on kind of how they're going back to people and how they're communicating people, making sure that, kind of people's concerns are being listened to. But I think it could be like a bit of an interactive thing, sort of like a day by day sort of barometer on how they've done, kind of be transparent. If you're going to go for fixing things and you're confident that you could do that, why not? And then people can see for themselves. It's like, oh, right, okay, it was 33%, now it's 66%. That's way better, kind of, yeah. Yeah.
Random.
Yeah.
Yeah, good. I like it.
Bit of a out there idea. I don't know whether that's, kind of if I went through the planning process, that's what I recommend, but that's a bit of an off the cuff idea. Yeah.
It's definitely better than what they did. If you stay listening to this and you want PR done,
2 easy installments of $100,000. You just charge them out of the wazoo, because they're just up the thing. Do you find that as well? Like, a lot of business owners I speak to, they're like the cheaper clients that, they have a high expectation of what you're trying to do, whereas you charge more. Okay, yeah, experience. Can see you fucking moving there. Yeah. Well, how did you work through price? Like, did you feel undeserving or like imposter initially, or have you always felt like, 50 grand, fuck it?
I guess because I'd come from working from agency land, I had quite a good steer on what you would charge for things in the corporate world.
What's the most that you've seen charged that you're a part of?
Depends what for. I mean, like, you're working on integrated campaigns that can be millions of dollars,
crazy,
so not PR never gets millions.
no, okay.
The way, that'll be all the advertising guys, the, TVCs and stuff, they'll scoop most of that. But, you get some pretty healthy budgets and, especially as well, some of the government sort of, change policies and sort of, health policies, there's some good funding behind those. Because now I've switched to working for purpose-driven organisations, working for myself, I work for lots of smaller clients. So that's one thing I've really had to nut out a little bit, is sort of what my pricing is, because, again, working with charities, not-for-profits, I want to be accessible to them, but I don't, I think you never fall in the trap of undervaluing what you do, and I've been doing what I've been doing a long time, so I've got to back myself and say, hey, my time is worth this, my team's time is worth this. So I kind of started that a little bit, and that's something I'm focusing on the moment, is creating some packages for maybe organisations that haven't tried PR, don't want to invest, kind of aren't ready to go, okay, right, we're going to jump in feet first. We want to try it a little bit, see some results, and then, kind of then we might be able to look to commit to a retainer or kind of ongoing project work. So just making it easy for them to kind of take that first step. And sort of packaging it up so it's affordable, but I'm not underselling or undervaluing my time or expertise. So bit of a balancing act there.
There's a balance. I partly asked that because I trained a lot of salespeople, and you'd see what they charge is proportionate to how they view themselves.
Right. Yeah.
And I'm having that problem with myself starting this new business and not believing in what I'm selling.
Right. Yeah.
Because I won't sell if I don't, and then charging a price where I'm the product.
Yeah.
I can sell something else.
Yeah.
When I'm selling me, I'm like, fuck.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. And I think there's definitely that whole thing of, kind of, I think especially in New Zealand, people don't want to be too bolshy or kind of, sort of, people are sort of a lot of people are fairly sort of humble about things. But my business coach was quite good with helping me get over that. Like, I think, because I'd gone from setting up and just sort of being a one-person contractor, charging an hourly rate, to kind of, going to have a team and sort of offering a virtual agency sort of model. And, I think I figured out I was undercharging myself, and I put my prices up by 50%, and I didn't have anyone complain.
Yeah,
so it probably says that I'm still too cheap. I think when you get to the point that maybe people are bulking a little bit, that you're probably on the right amount. So yeah.
Someone that really explained price well to me is Alex Mosey. He's a guy getting well known for business around the world now. And one thing with new salespeople, he makes it a game. See how many people you can get to gasp about the price. Like it's a goal.
Yeah. Yeah.
But he explained price in an interesting way. So you had these 3 wine bottles, exact same.
Mm-hmm.
One's more expensive. That one's seen as more valuable.
Yeah.
The other thing is you have more emotional investment because you're putting in more money.
Yep.
You can provide a better service because you have more money to invest in the things that service that person.
Yep. Yeah.
So in actual fact, you're doing a disservice to them by not charging enough.
Yes, I like that. A lot.
Hasn't landed emotionally, but logically that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I really like that. Yeah. That if you're kind of giving somebody a budget version, they're going to get a budget result. And then will they be happy with that? Whether they actually prefer to spend a little bit more and be really happy with the results because you had the resource to do it. Yeah, I think that's a really, really valid point. And sometimes I do, if there isn't, if I feel clients' expectations don't match the budget that they have, then, kind of we won't necessarily be going together because, it's I just know that I'm not going to be able to deliver what they want for what they're going to pay, and it's nobody's going to be happy. It's just, that's just a road to pain.
No, yeah. Well, the other thing he says is success is the quality of the no's you give. Because that's quite an important thing here. Because on one hand, like I see it like being kind and being nice is like saying no to someone when it's the right thing to do, even though you might get some money, you might appease them, you might be nice, people please them.
Yeah.
But you're doing the right by them.
Yeah.
Same thing with firing someone. If someone's not happy in their job and not fulfilled and not putting in an effort, it's the kind thing to let them go. Yeah.
Yeah.
So how do you navigate that? Because I see that, without being sexist too much, but women in business, that they often tell me the struggle between caring for others and doing what's right.
Yeah.
Have you ever had a challenge in that component?
Oh, yeah. I think I totally agree. I think it's all about boundaries. And that's one thing that I think for me, since being a parent and also a business owner, and not just in business, in my personal life as well, because I have to be doing the things that I need for me to be able to be performing as a business owner and a business operator and a mum really well. And that's part of why I set up my business, because I wanted to be showing up well in kind of all areas of my life, rather than kind of just getting through or kind of working really hard but then not being great in other areas. So I think it's definitely about putting boundaries down, and by saying no, you're not being mean or you're not being sort of horrible or whatever. You're just doing what you need to do things properly. I mean, for me, one thing, I love exercise, and that's like a mandatory thing for me. Like I like doing CrossFit. And I, if I don't get to the gym three or 4 times a week, over the next few weeks, my stress levels are just going to go like that, and everything else is going to go down. So actually saying no to certain meetings because I've got my gym time booked in, it might seem, I've got my priorities wrong. But for me, it's not. It's actually the right way, because otherwise I can't sustain what I actually do. So it's, and I think as well, it's not knowing what your limits are as well, and what you have resource to do. So, kind of sometimes a great opportunity can come along, but if you're already totally at capacity and you can't find another way of doing that, it's better just to say no, kind of like, and let things go. And it's, that's a skill that I have had to learn and work on, and still am working on, sort of when to say no. I mean, this week it was last week it was a really difficult decision, but I decided to resign a client, which I've never done before, which was a really, really, really tough decision. But I just felt the working relationship wasn't going well, and a few things had been raised sort of repeatedly, and they sort of the situation hadn't changed, and it was actually better to part ways. And it's just, sometimes it's better to have that tough conversation either with someone else and yourself for a better outcome. It's you've got to put your big girl pants on.
Big girl pants on,
basically. And, just think holistically about your business and your life, and, kind of what you want to be achieving out of both, and does it fit into that? So, yeah. And sometimes it's sort of saying no to something that might seem on the surface to be great, but actually doesn't work. So, yeah.
It's crazy what it does for your life, your relationships, your business. Doing what you know you should, You know, I think we all sort of know, like I was saying in the other episode, like Elon Musk talks about business just being a high degree of chores. There's things that need to be done and the complexity and responsibility of them increase.
Yeah.
What would be like either, if there's young women in business that are struggling with that boundary component and they're like, you know, I need to stand up for myself. I'm allowing people to walk over me, but I feel uncomfortable upsetting them. What would your advice be?
I think value yourself and back yourself. You know, you matter as much as anyone else in the team or an organisation. So, you know, kind of your opinion counts and your well-being counts. And you also have to be responsible for that. You know, don't expect other people to necessarily have your best interests at heart. You hope that they do, but that's not always the case. And people got different priorities and different goals to yours. So you have to be your own advocate and you have to be responsible for your well-being and, you know, kind of what you, and acknowledging and seeing what your boundaries are. You know, I think, it's taking that self-responsibility is the key.
Was there a point in your life where someone showed you that it was not okay to stand up for yourself, or they made you feel small, or where do you think that comes from? It's a bit heavy, but
it's interesting because I think it's, you know, it's like
don't need to divulge your soul right now, but
no. I mean, I guess you know, I've been sort of working in the working world doing PR and comms for about 20 years. And when I graduated, I think it was a recession and, you know, everything was very competitive in London. So you had to do, there were quite a lot of expectations to really, really go the extra mile. So, you know, I think I have always had a really strong work ethic that has been positive in some times, but also massive negative in other times. And I think for me, it actually got to the stage of having to be really getting to the stage of being really burnt out, that I just realised it wasn't sustainable for me. So after coming back to the workplace after having a kid and having, you know, kind of lots of other demands in my life, I just realised I can't do what I did before and put in those long hours and kind of, you know, just work to get stuff done, which is what I did before. Great for my bosses, and it was great for my career as well, because, you know, kind of I did kind of do well and kind of, you know, I was kind of wasn't being recompensed for that, but it stopped working. So I just had to have a different way of how do I make this work now. And so, you know, a lot of it it's having those boundaries, doing a lot less in a way, kind of delegating more, and, you know, thinking what sort of lifestyle do I want? You know, that's the whole thing of being a business owner. Surely having a business should be supporting the lifestyle, you know, you kind of, rather than the other way around. So, you know, kind of to me, it was a bit of a flipping the switch a little bit on the way I sort of saw things and how work and business should be working for me, rather than me kind of on the hamster wheel doing whatever I needed to do to kind of be good and sort of do a good job. So yeah, there's been quite a big flipping of the switch and seeing things differently to me.
Yeah.
You know, I wish I'd seen that earlier.
Be helpful, yeah, less stressful.
Hindsight would have been good. But then, you know, I enjoyed what I was doing. It was, you know, when working in Adland, it's a really social environment. So, you know, you kind of don't necessarily mind working those long hours. So, you know, I think there are different stages in your life where different things work, and it's knowing what is working for you at that stage. And having a tough look, if things aren't working, be critical and analyze it, and, you know, kind of, have those tough conversations with yourself and with your team or your boss or whatever. Yeah.
There's a bit of a trend or an archetype at the moment. I'm not sure what to think of it because, you know, it's not my warehouse, but there's a lot of women I'm seeing that are tossing up between motherhood and career and the implications of that. And, you know, I've asked Melanie Spencer from Socialites about that.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on either your experience? You sound like you're the gung-ho ad lady, and then all of a sudden you had a kid, and then you're like, shit, I've got a kid now, I need balance.
Yeah.
What has been your journey and realization about motherhood and balancing career
Yeah, I've literally just had to figure it out.
Oh, yeah, when
yeah. I mean, I think. And I kind of, you talk with your peers and people who are going through sort of similar things, and you've got that. Having a good support network like that definitely helps. But I think for me, in all my schooling and education, you kind of brought up saying, you can do whatever you want in the work world, and but it was never really broached or discussed. Oh, but then what happens if you want to have a family? And it's there. I didn't have a strategy before having kids. Maybe other people are a little bit prepared, but I think you figure it out. I think parenthood's kind of like a bit of a bombshell on everyone, because people do tell you stuff and you think, oh yeah, but until you're there, you kind of don't really know how tired you're going to be. And everyone's different, and every kid's different. So it's definitely been a big learning curve, but I think you can do both. And I know lots and lots of women who kind of are really successful, either still in the corporate world or running their own businesses and have kids and an amazing sort of family life as well. So you can do it. It can be done. Don't think either are mutually exclusive, but I think it does make you really analyse and think what your priorities are and where you're investing your time.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like it. I try not to do it too much, like, oh, you have a woman on so you can talk about women issues instead of just treat her like an equal and talk about business,
Yeah.
It's just, I just go through a list of people to talk to, and I don't come across too many female business owners, which is kind of sad.
Oh, right, okay.
Just statistically, there's just less.
Yeah.
What do you think that is? Because, I mean, obviously, I've definitely seen Boys Club, and they're exclusive, and they're all playing golf together, and, women are missing out some component. Also seen the other side of things where a woman might be like, oh, it's harder for me, poor me, but whatever they were, they still got the victim mindset. Have you seen sort of a change in working in that environment? Was Adland, it was normal, it was fine? You're seeing there's more of a move towards career being more important than motherhood, and like your mother might have shamed you because you hadn't had kids and you're 20 something?
I think it's very individual and personal, to be honest. Yeah, I think it really is. It's a real personal choice, and I think that's interesting that you've said that you haven't come across as many women business owners. I think there are, probably definitely more male, but there are lots of female.
Oh, there's heaps, yeah.
Business owners, and I love working, because some of my ex-colleagues from Adland, sort of women that I've worked with who've loved and kind of good friends, and they've gone on to have their own businesses now, and we collaborate on projects, and it's great. So there definitely there's a good amount of women who are doing that, and I'd encourage more women to do that. I actually think it's easier kind of running, for me personally, running a business than being an employee, because I get to set the agenda and I get to set my work hours, and I set the culture for my team and my expectations. So, you just have a lot more control, and some of the things that I didn't like about Adland, they're not part of my business, now. So for me, it works a lot better. Yeah. And I have a much better work-life balance. So, yeah, go for it. Do it.
Yeah?
Don't wait. Yeah.
I was just looking at it's 3:10, but we'll keep rolling.
Yeah.
I think it was about 20%, give or take. I don't actually know the data on it, but it was like 80% men. It was just like there was no thought, just like this company in services or marketing. I was calling different things: engineer, construction, architecture.
Yeah.
I mean, there is the only data that's the men and women pretty similar in terms of personality traits. There's only one of them is that men seem to be more interested in things and women seem to be more interested in people. Varies individual to individual. That's why you have more men in engineering and stuff like that. But it doesn't make sense to me why it's not 50-50 business. Or maybe it is and I just don't know and I've been calling the wrong ones. But it seems 80-20.
I don't think it would be yet. And I, kind of...
Why though?
I think as well in...
Get political.
Adland, it's you do find... I think it's changing now, but you do find in the kind of the senior roles, it's more men. And I think part of the reality in it, which is the elephant in the room, if a woman goes to have a kid, they take maternity leave and then they have a certain period of time. And then, that does affect their career and earning. Like, I think there's a chart that I saw that outlined that really well on, kind of actually the cost of motherhood, even if you're in a relationship with a partner, that kind of that has on their earning ability. So that is a reality. I saw one thing that was just made me giggle, that a couple who, I think it was a Reddit feed, who were considering having a kid, kind of in a relationship, and the wife, or the female, had done the calculation on what she would lose on earnings. She was like, yep, we'll have the kid, but you've got to pay me this. I think, why the fuck not? If they're doing it together, they're in a partnership, but she's going to lose out, why not? Why shouldn't she be recompensed? Yeah. So, that is an elephant in a room that I think people don't really talk about, because the biology of it.
Yeah, you can't help it.
That's only the women that can actually have the kid, and kind of like a lot more involved. But then there are, there are stay-at-home dads as well. So I think things are changing. So yeah.
Well, it's an interesting, I think, realization about society is, I always, my goal is to help everyone live a fulfilling life, and I think of what's the biggest leverage activity I could do to achieve that. I only started a marketing company to learn how to reach as many people as possible. I don't give a fuck about marketing, to be honest. Just wanted to know it. And parenting seems to be the biggest ROI. From 0 to 3 is when a child defines their identity, and a lot of the work is to try and fix what the fuck happened from 0 to 3. So it seems kind of sad how little value businesses as well as society puts on parenting. Like they say it, but like if you think of a well-raised child, and there's some variables outside the control of the environment, how positive that investment in that relationship and supporting that child is for society, and yet how little we actually value it.
Yep. Hell yeah. I mean, that's
hell yeah. Kick off.
Unpaid work. I think somebody, again, sort of something I saw on social media, so I don't know how accurate it is, but if you look at the hours that a woman puts in breastfeeding a kid a year, it's basically a full-time job.
Yeah, okay.
And then she's
how many hours? I don't know. I'm sorry, it's a bit rude, but
I can't remember.
How is it, like fucking 3 hours a day, or how long's the?
You kind of it's multiple times a day. So yeah.
Okay, I'm naive.
It was sort of it adds up.
Okay. Anyways.
But and then on top of that, she's doing probably housework and cooking and kind of taking kid out, and she might even be working part time. So it's like, even if you just paid a woman to do that,
Yeah.
It's I guess in the world we live in, just that there's paid work and there's unpaid work, but unpaid work shouldn't be unvalued work. Yeah. Really. Yeah.
Well, I think I only thing that matters in my life is purpose and people. And I think about that. I mean, there was a moment here where we had the shooting down the road.
Oh gosh, yeah.
Which is sad, and I made the call. I'm like, I'm not coming in.
Yeah.
And I had no expectation anyone else comes in.
Yeah.
I'm like, and then like I was with my flatmate. We were driving towards it. We saw the chopper. We drive past it every day.
Yeah.
She was wanting to get around it to still go to work. I'm like, what is our lives? You know what I mean? Like clocking in and clocking out on a meaningless existence. Like what's important?
Yeah. And exactly. Is it more important that you actually get to the office today, or is it more important that you're physically and mentally safe, and maybe just go and work up from home that afternoon? Is in the big scheme of things, what will be affected? And it is. I think we do have this, and I definitely did, in the years where, especially when I was younger, it's like, no, this is what you're supposed to do, and you're kind of like so invested in that, and you're kind of like, no, this is what you have, but why? I think it's like you've got to start questioning why you're doing things.
Yeah.
Not just doing things because that's your job role and your job description.
Well, I think like if you could, I would hypothesize that if you could unpack everyone's thoughts and you just and you could ask them, I would put money on 80% of them living lives for other people. Trying to meet the expectation of their father or mother, or, trying to prove that they can do something, or turning up out of the social pressure of the work or not having a conversation because of fear of being judged.
Yeah.
And you think about how much of your life is just being lived for someone else. And
Yeah, totally. I mean, that's the thing. It's like, you finish school. A lot of people go to university. You know, that's the kind of done thing to do. Not maybe sort of things are changing a little bit now. How do you even know what subjects you want to do? I mean, I fell into doing PR because I didn't know it existed. I studied fashion design because I wanted to do something creative, and kind of I you know, luckily I do in my job now. And when I graduated, I had a student loan, and you know, in London you had to take a free internship to get your foot in the door in the fashion industry. So you know, I needed to earn money. So I was lucky enough to get a 3-month contract working for a fashion PR company, and I was just like, epiphany! Wow, I didn't know this, you know, industry existed. So you know, for me, it was a lucky thing. But how do you know what you want to do when you're younger, really? Because you haven't, you know, you kind of lived that much of your life, you know. And I think it's something you've got to kind of evaluate as you know, kind of just as at different stages in your life, because it's going to change. But yeah, I think a lot of it is probably family pressure, cultural pressure, you know, kind of wanting to be seen to be successful. So you're kind of doing things. So, you know, I think, again, if you flip that switch and way of thinking and think, what life do I want to be living? And what is going to help me achieve that, and kind of start seeing things, or what world do you want to be living? You know, whatever your big kind of hairy kind of motivation is, and then doing things because of that, your mission, then things become a little bit different. And also, I think for me, is one thing that's really changed is that you have more purpose. So it kind of helps you ride out all the, you know, just the niggles and annoyances of business, because you're kind of doing it for a really good reason. Yeah, so no, it is. It's interesting. It's kind of, yeah, what motivates us to live the lives we live. Ooh. And is it actually the life that we want? You know, or is it somebody else's version of your life that you're kind of living? Yeah.
What's the way you help purpose-driven businesses?
Yeah.
So on that note, we've had a purpose-driven podcast. So thanks for coming on. We'll have your podcast. We'll have a link to your website if anyone wants PR.
Yep, it's www.raisecommunications.co.nz.
Boom. So thanks for coming.
Awesome. Cheers, Ryan.
It's all right.